Welcome to another episode of Pistons of Fury. In this episode, we are fabricating some engine mounts to get the LS engine squared away in the 66 Dodge Coronet station wagon. Alright, back in the shop. What we're doing today, actually what you just saw was I was just trimming a little bit of this out of focus exhaust manifold. So these are the stock truck manifolds. I was originally going to try to, well, I'm still a little bit on the fence, but I'm leaning in a different direction. I was going to try to make some custom turbo headers. The issue that I'm having is that they're going to be really ugly. And you know, you go back and forth on whether you want something to be functional or pretty. I think there's a kind of a balance between the two, which is what I'm kind of shooting for with this car. I don't want it to be perfect. I'm not striving for, like, you know, Riddler show car awards here, but I do want it to look decent. So actually what I think I'm going to do is go with some up and forward facing headers, because the issue I'm running into is right here on the passenger side. I basically got to run it upside down because I still want to run my AC compressor in the stock location. And there's a mount there, I'll talk about that in a minute. But the bigger issue, is that on the right side, I'm getting some major interference, even with the smaller power steering pump, just because I have the engine so far back in the engine bay and so low. That's where I want to put it. Normally the engine would, you know, stock-wise would probably come out to like right here in the front of that K-member. But I figure since I'm going to have all this turbo plumbing, intercooler, and AC condenser and everything up front, I want to leave as much room up there as possible. So that's what I'm shooting for. And what that does is it restricts me on what I can do with my exhaust. So another note is these Chrysler motors, and actually all Mopars from the 60s, had the engine offset because of the original steering box was so huge. So they actually offset it about 1.5 inches to 1 3/4 to 1 1/4, depending on the model, depending on the engine. So this thing is probably going to be offset to accompany the rest of the driveline about 1.5 inches to the passenger side, which is fine. It still gives me plenty of room on both sides, but I've got to build my mounts accordingly. So rethinking exhaust, there's some cheap stainless forward-facing turbo headers on eBay. $120 for 304 stainless, which is pretty awesome. And you know, if you think about the time, yeah, so forward-facing turbo headers on eBay, $120, 304 stainless. They're going to come out the front. They've already got the V-bands on, which is good. That saves some more money. I mean, I'd be looking at, for a decent set of stainless V-bands, I'd be looking at what, 50, 60 bucks already. So for double that cost, I'd have less work to do, and I'd have headers that probably clear everything. So, task for today. What I have is this transdapt biscuit style mount kit. So what that looks like basically is these guys here. You've probably seen them. Basically just, you have an L bracket that mounts on the frame that you weld, sits on this, and you have some adjustability. They have like 4 holes here. Now the kit they sent me is not the kit that I bought. This is for 24 to 30 inch frame width, which means rail to rail. What I wanted was the 27 to 33 inch because this car's a little wider, but that's not what they sent me. I don't feel like dealing with the returns, so what I'm going to do is, the way it's supposed to work is this guy is supposed to go on your frame rail mounted vertically like that, and there's the hole. What I'm going to do is flip it, so this gives me a little more room coming out, and I'll have to drill a new hole here, and I'll probably just come in here and do like a little gusset. I'm trying to show you with the camera, but I'll do like a triangle gusset here to add some strengthening. So that's what I'm doing. Today's episode, and what I'm hoping to get done today, is driveline angle. So I need to level the car, make sure it's at the correct ride height, because I have no torsion bars, so I've got to basically do it all manually. I don't have a suspension to hold the car up. So I've got to level the car, then level the driveline, and what that consists of I'll get into a little bit later. So first thing I'm going to do is just level the car and get it sitting the way it's going to eventually sit, and then I'll start to work on the drivetrain, and ideally I can get the mounts tacked in today. So that's my goal. We'll see if we get there. What's up, Reese? Alright, so car is pretty much level, or not level, I think it's generally at the ride height that I want it to be, so we're just going to roll with that. The floor is not 100% level, so it's within like a quarter of a degree. So I'm actually using this digital angle finder gauge. I got this with my alignment kit, but it's useful for all kinds of interesting things. So now what we have to do is I'm going to have to climb under the car, check the angle of the pinion, which is the rear, and then, so let's see, it looks like we've got an angle of 4.8 degrees right now on the engine, which means that our entire drive line is angled 5 degrees down, which is a little too much. So what I'm going to do, and the way this basically works, you can look up the images on like Google Images or something, but basically you have, you've got an angle for your rear end. It depends on what you're using to mount your rear end, like whether it's a 4-link or leaf springs, so it's going to be a little bit different for each of those. But basically you've got an angle for the rear end, you've got an angle for the transmission, and those two pretty much have to match. We've got laundry happening here. So those two have to match, and then you also have to account for what happens when you accelerate, which means that your rear end angle shifts a little bit. So a lot of math involved. You guys can, again, you can research this on your own. I'm just going to basically go with what I've found, which basically means I'm going to shoot for 2 degrees. So I'm going to shoot for the entire engine and transmission being 2 degrees angled toward the back. I'm going to shoot for the rear pinion being 2 degrees up, so that I zero that out, and then hopefully when I accelerate, when this car is done, I don't get outside of 4 degrees difference between the two. But we'll see. Anyway, I need to climb into the car, check the rear end angle, and then I'll go from there. I kind of know what I'm at with the engine because I just measured it. So we'll see what our difference is. All right, so it's actually been a couple days. It's now the next weekend, whatever. Doesn't matter to you guys because this is all one video. So the new addition to the garage, as previously mentioned, these things, 110 bucks. They're actually manufactured by DNA Motoring. You've probably seen their stuff on eBay and Amazon. I don't really know who they are, but I assume they're just a front for a China manufacturer. So here's the deal on these things. I haven't measured total wingspan, but they do fit. They fully clear steering box on this side. They also clear everything on this side. They leave me plenty of room down here to do my AC, and they look good, more importantly. Not more importantly, that's actually the least important thing, but they also happen to look good, so that's a bonus. And what we have here is this is 1 3/4 primaries and 3-inch collectors. Now this setup's a little big for a 4.8 engine. I do know that going into it, so I think one of the things I'm going to be doing is cutting these back right here and just welding on some 2.5-inch V-bands to keep my my pipe size down for the crossover, to hopefully keep spool times or spool RPMs down like below 4,000. I want this engine to spool the turbo not too early, but also not super late in the rev range. Super middle, for lack of a better term. Yeah, so that's cool. I'm actually not going to be doing anything on these because what I am going to be working on now is it's actually this. So thanks to the magic of the internet, from eBay, for $12 you can order plates of steel. So this is 1/4-inch plate, and what I have to do basically on the other side is I need to move my engine mount. So I need to basically cut this off here, cut this off on the other side, make a new base plate that shifts this mount probably another 4 inches back toward the back of the engine. On my driver's side I have interference with the steering box. So I need to redo this mount, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get in here and try to cut this apart and then cut a new plate out of the plate steel. So more plasma cutter time. Alright, so update on where we are. And that last piece, that was actually last night, so it's the next day today. Well, yeah, it's a funny statement. Anyway, what I had to do basically was make a new mounting plate to position this guy back so that it comes, well, I guess I can try to show you. So that it goes right under my steering shaft. So along with the Borgeson steering box, you can buy this coupler, which basically adapts your old steering rod. So the way it works is my mount plate has to mount right here, which would have interfered with the box right here. So basically I've made an elongated base for that, and now the mount comes right here and is going to poke right under the steering coupler, and I'll have my other bracket right on the frame. So again, with this build, I'm not using the mounts off of the K-frame, I'm going right to the frame of the vehicle. We'll see whether or not that's a bad idea. I did a lot of research online and tried to find some comparable mounts, specifically like B-body Mopars, like this Coronet. Couldn't find anything, so we're just gonna send it. See how it goes. I mean, it's the frame of the car, so if something happens, then that is what it is. Yeah, so next I want to get that, so I have that tacked, and I want to get mounted back up. So we're going to mount it to the block. The other one's already mounted on the block. I'm going to pull this other header off and put the bottom, actually one thing I need to do is, in like, let's see, these mounting plates for the other side of the mount. So basically this is going to go on the frame like that. So I need to drill a hole in the top here, or plasma cut a hole in the top, which is probably what I'm going to do because I don't have a good enough hole saw that can go through 1/4 inch plate steel. So put another hole there and see where we come out. And eventually I'll probably have to come back and gusset this just to make sure it's strong enough. But for now, hole there, put the mounts together, see where everything lines up, and maybe get close to tacking them in place. So let's see how this goes. Alright, next morning, I'm getting an early start, kind of. And where we are is I have some basic pilot holes drilled in the L brackets that are going to get welded to the frame. So just wanted to do my test fittings. So the issue I've got here is I have this hump that's part of the shock tower cover, and it's getting in the way, and it's kind of right in the ride height. So I think I need to come in here with the plasma cutter again, which, by the way, new favorite tool. And basically just cut a U-channel so that this can mount flush to the frame rail here. So kind of same situation on the other side. Set that way. We basically have, this one is actually fitting a lot better, so I basically have flush mount to the frame rail here, pops right under the steering column coupler and over, like that little thing is where the torsion bar comes out, so it'll basically be sitting right on top of the torsion bar, but not too close, so actually really good placement on that one. And just, again, have that smaller pilot hole drilled in there. I've got a bigger stepper drill bit coming to enlarge the hole to the right size, but this should do for now. So next thing I need to do is basically just mark this and then come in here with the grinder and clearance that, make sure I've got raw metal to raw metal, because this, if any weld ever had to be solid and done right, without any imperfections. This is the one, because it holds the engine in place, and this thing's going to be making a lot of power. So yeah, got to get that right. So next things I need to do: mark the frame, clean the frame off, not sand, but like basically remove the paint from the mounts, and actually add some triangle gussets to the mount on both sides, both L's, before I mount them to the frame, because that's just going to be one of those critical things. That, and I have to mount the gussets and get them welded before I mount them to the frame, so I'm not bending over and or welding upside down while they're on the car. Yeah, so grinding, welding, more welding, and then hopefully by the end of today we've got an engine mounted and I can get rid of this situation right here with the China ratchet strap and the 2x4 and bending bolts on the front of the engine. Yeah, so that's where we are. We'll see where we get. Alright, we're back in the shop here, and the last thing you guys saw was these brackets getting welded up, or the motor mount plates getting welded up. So what we've done here is, I've got these, this is like self-etching weld-through primer on these guys, so that's why they're gray. So these are getting welded to the frame today, and then I added a gusset here on this guy to hopefully help support that. And yeah, so not super final. I'm going to hit these with some primer too, but basically just wanted to get this in here to support it, and I can pull these off and do some finished work on them while I'm painting the engine and doing all that. So that's next phase, But for now, they're good, they're functional, they're gonna hold, they're strong. Got really good penetration on the weld, so Miller-Matic 175 for the win. Some of my better welding in some areas, other areas not. But yeah, so one new addition to the shop off Amazon, and I guess I'll give you guys some feedback as I use these. But this is a set of like carbide burrs for porting and stuff. So these are like 1/4 inch shank, so they'll fit in my die grinder. But I've been just having a lot of problems finding something that that can grind metal at a reasonable pace. So I'm hoping those will kind of fix that. Also, new drill vise. I had like an Amazon wish list thing that stuff that I've been meaning to buy for forever now. Just kind of threw it all in the cart. Also got one of these guys. So another step drill bit. It's a little bigger than the one I have, so that's cool. And what else? Maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe that's it. Oh, got some cutoff wheels for my grinder, so I don't have to use the air cutoff wheel anymore. So yeah, we are. I think we're ready to place these things back in the car and weld. So let's get started doing that. Alright, so that's going to be a wrap for this episode. Super major progress. So we have LS mocked up superficially. Have my engine mounts more than tacked, but not fully welded, so they're enough that they can hold it. So it's suspended by its own free weight, or the mounts, so that's pretty awesome. This is an old radiator. It's a 26-inch that I had from a Ford Crown Victoria, and I just put it in there because I'm starting to just think about doing some planning here in terms of what's going to happen with the turbo situation, and it's super crowded up here, so that's not looking promising. But we're going to get the turbo here in the next week or two, and then we'll be able to do some real mock-up. So super cool. On the K-frame, I chopped off the mount for the old engine mount, and the AC slides right in there. Looks like it was made to be there, so that's awesome. I get to keep my AC in this car, which is great. It's going to make it a much better daily driver experience. Everything else works. Stock truck alternator and power steering pump in the bracket fully clears this header, so eBay header clears, no problem. Truck accessories. Did a kind of a level thing from like right here all the way across. All this stuff clears with a straight edge, so it should have no problem with the hood. And good news, when I dropped the engine down on the mounts, it actually took me down to about 2.5 degrees front to back. So if I need to, I can actually come down on the back of the transmission a little bit, give myself some more room for that U-joint clearance in the trans tunnel. So all in all, looking pretty good here. Next up for the build, I'm going to continue mocking some stuff up. If I can't get the turbo by the next episode, then I will probably start to build my trans mount. That's kind of the last thing, and then I can start to think about how I'm going to beef up that torsion bar crossmember, because that's kind of a critical structural thing that I have to do to be able to get the suspension back in, this car sitting on its own weight again. Yeah, so that's it. LS, Dodge Coronet. It's moving along, making some good progress here. So thanks so much for watching, and once I get myself in focus, I will see you guys next week.